Hey, this is episode number 10 of the Obsessive Creative Podcast. This is a community of relentless creators, and here we talk about what it's like to be compelled and obsessed to create things that matter. And of course, we stay away from stressful things like Instagram, taxes, and business development. I'm your host, Luke Cleland, and this week I'm really excited to share a conversation I had with Karen Schipper, wife of Ben Schipper, who we had on a few weeks ago. She is an illustrator and art director in Greenville, South Carolina, and I'm really excited to share our conversation together. Karen, thanks for being here.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So, Karen, tell us a little bit about like what you do now and kind of what was your journey into doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, so right now I am a art director at Fairview Lane, which is a full service agency in Greenville, South Carolina. But then on the side, I also run a stationery business and I do freelance illustration and design.
So I think that, yeah, we were talking about this like moments ago, is like you are the like opposite of Ben, right? Ben has been doing like, while his style has changed a little bit, like has changed over the years, right? But like he has been doing like this one thing, and the reason why I thought it would be great to talk to you is because I feel like very similar to you in the same way where we have tried so many different things in the creative world, like, and I think we're always kind of like have our eye on something different. And so tell us a little bit about that, like how different you are from Ben. And if you haven't listened to Ben's episode, you should go back. It's Anne of Green Gables, Star Wars, and something else. But
I think that's why it makes a great partnership between Ben and I, even though we probably get into a lot of fights and can't work on the same projects because we just have different visions, which is completely okay because, I mean, what's better than iron sharpening iron, right, in your growth? But Ben is definitely, like, he's a comic creator. He makes graphic novels, he illustrates them and writes the stories, and he's always known that he wanted to make stories, basically. It took him it was always like one step at a time, basically, towards like a bigger goal. Whereas for me, I'm always thinking like, oh, this could be a really cool idea. Let me try something like that. And then like, if that flows into something like a lot like interesting for me, then I'll like dig my feet like deeper into that. Going to college, I actually had no idea that I wanted to do design actually. When I enrolled into college, I was thinking, oh, I love like people, I love like humans, so I'm going to do like people relations or, PR or HR because they both have people or humans in it. Yeah, not knowing that, I mean, that's not it's kind of about humans, but there's also a lot. Anyway, it was not what I wanted to do. But my childhood has always been, art has been the one thing consistent that I've always done. I grew up in Hong Kong, and I had pretty typical Asian parents, Chinese parents, and I did a lot like karate, learned Japanese, like Chinese school, just all of the above. But at the same time, art has always been the one thing that's been in my life, and I've always enjoyed it. And so I was considering like what major to go into. I remember talking to my dad, who has his own business, and my mom helps him with that too, and they've always ran their own business growing up. And I was like, what's gonna make me money, And he was like, don't go into something because of money, go into something because you love it. And I was like, I don't know what I love, and I think a lot of times like I still like go into that. I was like, what do I really love? Like, I don't really know. But so I was like, well, I know art, and I at least like, if it's the one thing consistent in my life, I feel like it couldn't like go horrible. And so I was like, well, I'll try graphic design, but I didn't even know how to turn on like a Mac. Like I had to ask the person next to me, like, where is the dang on button for this thing? But then thankfully, like it turned out to be great. And like, I love the like strategy behind design and the communication behind design. But then since like design has so much to do with like on the computer these days. I mean, there's people who do it like analog or whatever and are more of artists behind that. But then like the art side, like working with my hands and like creating like illustrations has always been so like just like deep within me. And so I've just continued to dabble in that. So after graduating, I was doing graphic design. I was a junior graphic designer. And then at my day job, I was not completely fulfilled in that creative side. And so on the side, I would be lettering or just trying out different techniques of stuff, and then started a card business with a friend of mine. And then I would say like throughout college, it was like, okay, what's the next step that like is going to help me to stay creatively fulfilled in the sense of like, I don't know, it wasn't like, I loved the people that I worked with, but I always knew that like, you see online and you're like, I'm not part of these design communities or these artist communities, but like, I love what they're doing. And I know like, I can like, that's what like rejuvenates me, you know? And so it's like, you can't help yourself, but like get into those, like, you want to get into that kind of like art forms. And I think that's like the
you kind of like find your people, like that kind of like signals like if you're in the right area, right? You're like, oh, right, these people are like me. They think the same way, and they do these things that are like different than other people, and that kind of like draws you in, right?
And like they're the people that like challenge you, and like they want you to keep like getting better. Whereas like sometimes like in my day job, I would like come to like after a couple months or so, I'll be like, okay, like how do I continue growing? And if I'm like hitting a wall at my work, then I would go to my side business a lot of times, or like whatever my side thing is during that time. And so I would say like, just like, so I've graduated 2013 and it's been 7, 8 years now. And so, just like during this whole time, like I've dabbled in kind of a lot. So before I took this art director job at Fairview Lane, which is like an amazing company, and the people who work there are so challenging and so good at what they do, and it really has been a huge blessing. But at the same time, like before I decided to go back into the workplace because I miss people a lot, hence people relations. I was freelancing for 2 years before that and working from home. And during that time, it really like kind of like helped hone in on like what are the things I do enjoy, and what are the things that like just like doing design and illustration at the same time. Like how do I see that as like a unit as opposed to a dichotomy of like fields. Like it doesn't, I think in a lot of times like we're thinking like all these different fields in like the creative like journey are different buckets. And sure, there are, I mean, it's definitely good to like just have one thing that like you're continually like mastering your craft in, but at the same time, it's like all of this can be seen as, in a way, as like your creative journey, your life, like it's, yeah.
Yeah, I think, and we've had this conversation a lot. I think like, because I think I'm like, I feel like I'm a perfectionist, and I see these different kind of desires or whatever, creative like little paths that I want to take, seeing them as a dichotomy. I think that's the right word. Like different, right? Like I seeing them as like different paths, and I can't take them all, so like I feel trapped. And I think as you kind of go on your journey, I think I've started to see that more as, oh, that's like my version of like, what I can offer people, or what I can offer the creative world. Like it's the difference that I like, that I like these 3 different things, as opposed to like someone else who likes these 3 different things, right?
Right.
And that makes you, the like particular person. That's what makes you different. While I feel like for a lot of years, it was easy to see those things as like the problems. Like I like these 2 things, and I don't like, they can't be on the same website. Like how can I put these? And we've had lots of conversations of like, how do I like put this photo? For me, it's like, oh, I have these like really conceptual photos that are like very conceptual, but then I also do wedding photography. So like how can I like bring those things together, right? Like it seems impossible.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you. I mean, yeah, we've had so many conversations about this, but yeah, and I would say it like for the longest time I did see like design and illustration as a dichotomy. Like I would just be so like with the labels, like am I a designer and am I an illustrator, you know? And like and I'm sure like even you as a photographer, designer, whatever, a podcaster, YouTuber, whatever. But then like I think we get hung up on these labels so much. It's like, who is our identity? Like I'm more than just an illustrator, hopefully. I'm more than just a designer. Like I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, and like I think once I started realizing like, okay, like my work doesn't define who I am, and it's more like who I am defines my work, and like who I am is basically like the like history of me. Like as you were saying, like is it like it's what I thought were my weaknesses. Like for growing up, I was like, I don't know if I'm like Chinese or am I American or Western, like I grew up in Hong Kong, but I spent some time in Canada, and I can't speak Cantonese like fully, and I can't speak English like like an American, so it's like married to American, my family's still in Hong Kong, and then I'd get so frustrated, and I'm like, just tell me like who I'm supposed to be, but then once like, and likewise for like the art, like it's like I love illustrating, but like I don't want to, so it's just like all these things that like I feel like I put these labels on myself. And then once I like started like, I don't know, realizing that like my identity really shouldn't be like grounded in like my work, my work doesn't define me. If it does, it would really be pretty devastating in a way, because there are days when you're going to come up and you're going to not show up at your work and do the best like illustration or design possible, or something falls short. So if that falls short, then does that mean like I'm a failure? Like and likewise, like if I'm a wife and that day I like don't know what to cook or something, like, or I mean, not that like a wife is supposed to cook, like I love cooking and that's why I use that as an analogy, but it's like if I make a crappy meal, like does that mean I'm crappy? Like no, like so I think like in that sense, like realizing that art and life really like it kind of works in tangent, which is so beautiful, I think. And like I think that's why it's like it's seeing that as a whole and working together, like in that sense of like, well, like if I go on a walk, like being able to take a break and like enjoy nature, or enjoy like walking and talking with like my husband, like that actually informs some of my work too, you know? So
I don't remember where I heard this, but I'm trying to remember. I was thinking about this just yesterday, and it was someone talking about like you always need to be able to hate your work a little bit, because if you can't get to the end of the week and be like, oh, I just want to like be out of here, I just want to be done with this thing right now. If you're always like too in love with your work, there's probably like some type of identity problem. Like you're feeling like you can never hate your work because that's yourself. And like if you hate your work, you hate yourself. And so if you can't detach yourself a little bit from your work, letting your work be your work and not who you are completely, then it's too precious, right? It's like letting your project or whatever be the baby. Like you can't, like if you can't hurt your baby, well, that's terrible like analogy, but if you can't like hurt your project, you can't throw it out and redo it again, then you've gotten too close to it and too precious to it. I was even thinking like, I don't know, back in graphic design school, is like every project we had, you would have to go around and sit in front of the whole class, and they would tell you what they didn't like think was good about your project, and think was good, like what was good and what was bad about your project. Like, oh, you could like, not do these like freaky squeegee and bubbles or whatever that is, right? Like you But if you can't, like, if everything has to be perfect, yeah, you'll never grow. Like, you have such a close identity between who you are as, like, I'm a photographer, and if I can't figure out, you know, all of these buckets within being a photographer, then it feels so overwhelming that I don't know which way to go forward anymore. Like,
yeah. And it's like so much more liberating actually to think yourself like more than just like your occupation too. It's like you've like if you're constantly just thinking about like, oh, how do I like draw better, or how do I take a better photo, like I don't think that actually helps like you do that thing better. I mean, sure, there's techniques, but then like it's like if you actually like see more as like as a holistic like person, like how do I become better, you know, like how do I continue growing, like that, like you're actually seeing like life, and like you want to document that and you want to tell a story because of like what you're enjoying in life, or like what you're experiencing in life. It might not be enjoying even, like it might be because you're having like depression and anxiety, but like that's part of your story, and like that actually creates content for your work. And so I think like being able to like lean into that too, of like just seeing that as that actually does grow you and is part of it. And
right, like experiencing life like will let you make better work. Like, but if you're always super focused on like, you know, like I have to like grow this business, I have to take better photos, then you're like, you don't go out for a walk and you don't experience those things that you can like draw inspiration from. Like, I think even, you know, myself as a photographer, I've realized like even like part of that like identity, you know, thing, I feel so like stuck to like I have to like work from 9 to like 5. I can't work from like 10 to 6 or like 11 to like 8 or whatever, like because then my like all my structure gets like thrown off, right? And so but realizing that like it feels weird for me to like you like including inspiration like walks or inspiration experiences for me as part of work seems crazy to me. Like it doesn't feel like I'm working. Like it's I can't waste time and go to like the art gallery. Like that's like wasting time. I need to like be productive and like do things. But the problem is like if you're a creative person, and especially I think if you lean on the side of like I don't have this like I don't have this lane that I'm like just chipping away at every day. Like I have a pretty broad range of like you said, like, oh, I'm doing like lots of photos, but I'm also like dabbling, like I'm in podcasts, and I like to make videos as well. And if I don't have that inspiration that I need, then I can't like accomplish and do any of the things that I want, because I'm so focused on like you said, I'm so focused at like the task instead of like the process of like enjoying the whole process of like being a person and like gathering inspiration from all areas of life.
Yeah, definitely. And like I mean, as your podcast title or whatever name is, Obsessive Creative, I guess like the community of like being obsessive creative, I guess it's like you do need that community. It's not just in isolation, hence why you're interviewing me, I guess. But then like just I feel like especially right now in like this time during the pandemic, I felt so much of that monotony, and it's like even going out for a walk and like having a Zoom call with someone, or like that has been a lifesaver. Like I can like sure I can sit at a desk and like continue to like work and like 8 to 5, 9 to 7 or whatever it is, and but then it's like I'm definitely like feeling like the drag of it, of like just having like you do need to like I mean right now stay at home is a great thing to do, but then like if you live in the suburban area, like going for a walk like that seriously is a lifesaver. And seeing a neighbor from, across the street, like
Yeah, like
those
pushing
kind of things,
yourself
like,
to like. And I think I love the idea of how you were talking about like how can I always be growing or like pushing myself, and often that's by doing uncomfortable things, like doing things that are outside of the normal routine that you're super
yeah,
like safe in. And even
yeah.
like right now, it's best to stay at home, but even going for a walk or going like the other direction instead of the same direction that you go every time, right?
Seriously, which is amazing actually. Like we do that every once in a while, and it's just like, whoa, I've seen so much more. Like even the other side of the house is so much more interesting than like, yeah. But
so how do you think? So kind of going back to like community, how has community kind of shaped your little path from going from trying different things within your creative career?
It's a good question. I mean, a lot of times when I do have a full-time job and I still want to like do something creative, I guess I end up talking to a lot of like local people. Like our local Greenville community is amazing. They are, a lot of them are small business owners, a lot of them are artists, and it's been just like even talking to them and like hearing like, hey, what do you guys need? Like, how can I help you guys? But then also thinking like who like on like my online community, which isn't huge, but there is, like what are people like, I don't know. I guess I'm pretty people oriented in the sense of like I can't work alone. Like I need like human interaction. And so like I'm more of an extrovert than an introvert, I would say. And so it's like, how can I create art that will bring like, that will help people relate or like help bring a smile to their face or bring some kind of joy. And so it's like, I think a lot of times it's like, what do I need and therefore my community probably also needs that in a way, like, and in that sense, it's like, just thinking locally and thinking in kind of like your immediate like spheres. Like I think that has really informed my art, and you need those people to kind of like keep like pushing you too. It's like you need the friends that like and to like encourage you, because like when you are kind of in a dead space, I don't know, like
you like get so focused on yourself, like that it creates this kind of like endless loop that you can't get out of, right? It's like it's so easy to like get in these like endless spaces of like, oh, am I this person or this person? Should I do this project, or is it like, oh, is that too weird? Is that too freaky? And like bringing someone in or just like explaining it to them can like kind of break that endless cycle that you have.
And it's like, oh, you actually like this actually makes sense to someone. Oh, cool. Like
it's so easy to think that your own voice is boring or your perspective is uninteresting or your collection of experiences and attributes like is like it's not that special. But the fact that we don't have the same attributes makes anything that you say kind of new and interesting to me. And I think that's the amazing thing about community is like the more voices you bring into a room or a conversation, you immediately have new perspectives, because like even though both of us, I live in Canada and you spent some time in Canada, we have very different experiences. And I think that's the crazy thing about community is that people can bring such like, even if they've had the same life as you, they can bring such a different perspective than what you have.
Definitely. I mean, even Ben and I, like, we live in the same house. Our life is probably like, we do the same thing. I mean, sure, like, he didn't grow up with my childhood. Our childhood were, like, pretty, like, drastically different. But the fact that, like, even when we're doing, like, the same thing, it's like, what I'm saying, sometimes he'll be like, what I said is exactly what you just said. I'm just saying, like, but we have like just completely different way of like communicating, or like our perspectives are different and therefore we communicate different. And or like we're watching a same show or listening to the same podcast, what sticks to him? I'm like, you just got stuck in the beginning of this podcast, and like I'm already like further down, and like I'm happy that you're learning from this part, but I'm like, I want you to hear this like section. But he's like, what's wrong with like being not wrong, but like it's great that there is things that impact what you say, or like what you hear, like those stick to different people so differently, and then from there it's like as you synthesize together as a community too, it's like that's beautiful because you get to like enjoy even like the same thing in very different ways, and then like seeing how that plays out. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, like what would you say to this is going back a little bit, but like what would you say to like an earlier Karen or someone else, a different Karen that like has no idea, like doesn't know which direction, or feels like it's like, am I an illustrator, am I a graphic designer, am I a photographer? Like what do you say to those people? Because also from the outside looking at you, like you like, and this is often the case with people who feel conflicted, is like it looks so unified, right? Like it looks like, oh wow, like Karen has like, it looks like she's just like nailing this, like she knows exactly where she's going, like she doesn't like have all these different like loves or whatever. Like what would you say to someone that like has that similar kind of feeling?
Oh man, that is such a hard question, because I mean, I was just thinking, like, as we're talking during this podcast, I was like, you've seen, like, how I was, like, 5-6 years ago. And even, like, 2 years ago, I feel like. But, like, I feel, I don't know. It's, you know, we sound so put together on, like, things. Or, like, on a website. Or, like, on Instagram. It's, like, I don't know, you have that Instagram life or whatever, but it's like, of course, like everything's curated, and like, I mean, why would you put like, I think some people are better. I wish I was better at it, like putting like your messes and your processes on there. I would say to a young Karen, I think there was a lot of like doubt, I guess. Like I just never like really had confidence in myself. Not that I like have it to 100%. I don't think anybody should have like confidence to 100%. I don't think that's helpful. But then like at the same time, it's like to learn things, it takes time, you know, and like meaning you will like fall, and you will like just not understand things, like talking to, and like, you will
start really bad projects, and then they will fail miserably.
Ben and I, we had a mentor that we were a mentee. Yeah, so we were the mentor to a mentee, a student who was graduating from college. So she was a senior, and this semester. And one of the questions she asked us was like, yeah, what would we tell her as someone who's like soon to graduate and like find a job in like the creative industry? And we were like, basically like just work really hard, you know, like in the sense of like put lots of hours in. I mean, you don't have to see it as like just like tied to your desk and like just, you know, being a slave to your work, but like it does take time, like, and the more time you can put into the work, the more bad ideas and failures you're gonna like come across. And so it's like, but then like at the same time you need to be able to step back and like kind of analyze like, okay, like now that I've created, you know, like I don't know, 100,000 hours. I don't know how many thousands of hours of work. Like, what do I just keep being stubborn about the way I'm doing things, or do I have to pivot? You know, like, and it like for example, I did lettering for a long time when it was like really popular, obviously, and like and it brought in some business, and like I was starting to enjoy it. But then I realized like, did I actually enjoy it for the sake of enjoying it, or like for the sake of like, was I trying to like actually master the craft of lettering, or was it just a trend, or was it, you know, like how was I like bringing a new like perspective to it? And so I realized that I wasn't actually like doing it for the sake of like, this was like what I actually wanted to do. So that means pivoting to maybe another direction, you know, like it doesn't mean like, okay, forgetting lettering like completely, like it still is in my design and my illustrations. Like I still understand letter forms and all of that. But it's like, how do I use that to like, what's my best next step forward? And like, I think, I don't know if Ben talked about this in his episode, like, he was a children's book illustrator. And like, so for like a couple years, he was like creating, like all his portfolio work was all for children's books. But what he realized that he wasn't being able to tell his own stories. And so it's like, okay, he put in like 2-3 years of work into building this like whole like portfolio for like children's books. But then like now like he realizes like, if I need to tell my own story and not just illustrate other people's stories, I need to start either write my own children's books or do a graphic novel. And for him, it was a graphic novel. So it's like, sure, you're putting your head down and like you're failing and you're like, you have to like get better at your technique and try lots of different things. But then how do you also take a step back and think about how do I pivot from here? Yeah, so. And
I think community too can make a big impact in kind of like a soundboard of like, oh, yeah, like you're really good at these things, or these things really impacted me. And I think that's a great thing. I think especially if you care about impacting people, is like, does the work that I care about actually impact people, or like how is that like being received?
And it's like easy to think like, oh, all this stuff that like, sure, I dabbled in so many things and like maybe I wasted time on them, but I don't think I ever wasted like, as long as you I don't know. I don't feel like you should ever, don't be hard on yourself and like this time is wasted. I think it's wasted when you're just sitting around and maybe, I don't know. There's times when you can just binge watch a show or whatever. You know, sometimes you need that. But then it's like, I think as long as, I don't know, there's time for work, time for play, and time for relaxing. But then like, anytime you're putting into it, it's not wasted.
Thank you so much for listening this week. I hope each episode encourages you to lean into who you are as a creative and do work that matters. I'd love for you to subscribe and follow us along each week on this creative journey together. And if you love the podcast, I would love for you to leave a review. It doesn't even have to have any words on it. Just a rating would be awesome. And until next week, stay obsessed.